Look how they live in luxury while our African people, them suffer us. How you strategize all your lives, saw blood, sweat, and tears that built your empire. The system was designed for I and I to never rise, only bleed to fulfill your desires. I was born with both hands on my heart from Mama Africa.
It's time for liberation. Mama Africa awaits a revolution. This is the time for meditation. Free up your mind from the lies and illusions. This is the time for liberation. Come make we stand up and start a revolution. In these are times of elevation. Have you keep your head above all pollution. Revolution in the air. My people prepare. No more African children. Not to shed no tear. Full time be aware. Babylon no sincere after all. Who are send the guns them out here? Spiritual warfare. They may rage on the people like they don't care. The world we live in is unfair. Yet a victim mentality won't take us nowhere.
Joining us today is General Thau-Thau Haramanuba of South Africa of the Bakehase House, and he is also an advisor of the African Rastafari New Faculty of Overstanding, which is the topic of today, which we'll ask him about his perspective and why he feels we need a new faculty of overstanding.
Blessed love, General Thau-Thau. Please give the audience a brief self-introduction, my Lord.
Blessed my Lord, Rastafari, greetings in the name of His Majesty, Karamawi Kadamawi Haile Selassie, and Her Majesty Empress Menen. And greetings in the name of the Rastafari movement, the vanguard of the African liberation. Yes, I bless up. My name is Thau-Thau Haramanuba. I'm a president of Rastafari United Front, which is based here in South Africa and is in 16 other African countries and in Brazil. And of course, we had a branch in Jamaica, which later collapsed. I'm also a deputy chairman of Rastafari Continental Council, the RCC. I'm residing in South Africa. I'm also a Grand Master of the Order of Bakehase, one of the orders of Rastafari in South Africa. And I'm part of 7 other organizations. I'm involved with 7 other organizations, Rastafari and Pan-African organizations.
Good. Give thanks. For the eye is very active. That's great. So could you briefly explain what the Rastafari United Front is and what purpose it serves for Africa and African people?
Rastafari United Front is a resolution of the Rastafari National Summit, which we convened in 2014 from the 28th of February to the 1st of March in 2014, after we came out of the 8th Pan-African Congress. The 8th one since the first one in 1900 and the 5th one in 1945. And then the 8th Pan-African Congress was in South Africa at University in January 2014. And then along the side of that conference, we established the National Rastafari Task Team to prepare for the National Rastafari National Summit, which at the conclusion of the National Rastafari Summit, we came out with the Rastafari United Front as a unitary organization of Rastafari in South Africa to represent Rastafari, both collectives and individuals, those who belong to houses and those who don't belong to houses. Its primary objectives being a civil, a cultural, and a faith rights organization, looking at the civil rights of the Rastafari, the cultural rights, and the faith rights. That being the result of having reflected on the CRL Commission Rights Report. The CRL is a Chapter 9 institution of the Constitution in South Africa. It's a constitutional democracy institution which is supposed to be the constitutional watchdog. So there are institutions like the Human Rights Commission, the Gender Commission, the Public Protector, and the CRL. So the CRL is abbreviation for Commission for Promotion and Protection of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Rights. So the CRL, in 2008, in their consultative conference, they took a resolution that they need to have a dialogue and a research within the 3 million Rastafari who are in South Africa. So between 2011 and 2012, the CRL conducted a research and a dialogue within the 5 provinces of the 9 provinces of South Africa, and then conducted this research among the 2 million Rastafari of the 3 million Rastafari, and came out with a document which is called Challenges Faced by the Rastafari Community. So, challenges faced by the Rastafari community in South Africa. And then that document, it highlighted 44 recommendations, which those 44 recommendations are actually indicating 44 areas in which the Rastafari are oppressed in South Africa. So they're basically saying we are oppressed in 44 different ways, and this is carried out by 10 government departments and the South African Council of Churches and the South African Media House, the 4th estate. So having reflected on these reports of the CRL Commission and the other report, which is the school, the public holiday report, and also the school uniforms report, whereby they're looking at should Rastafari children be forced to dress up in a certain way, or Rastafari workers at work should be forced to dress up in a certain way. And then there was a public holiday report whereby they say in South Africa we have too much Christian holidays, since we know that apartheid was a Christian doctrine. So we're having Christmas, Easter, all of these things. So, and then South Africa recognized 7 constitutionally recognized religions, which Rastafari is one of those 7 constitutionally recognized religions. In South Africa, Rastafari is considered as one of the 7 constitutionally recognized religions. Now, it's one of the things that make us reflect on that if you are constitutionally recognized, the government have a responsibility to protect you and to promote you because they recognize you. So therefore, they came up with a report in 2012, and then that report sat for 2 years without the community doing anything really about the report. Then in 2014, we decided to convene a National Rastafari Summit, and then we look into that report, and then we concluded that we need an organization that will advocate what is indicated in that report, and that organization should be a unitary front. That is how Rastafari United Front come in, and with its own main philosophy that united we will take Rastafari to the front, recognizing that currently Rastafari is in the periphery of the South African society, it's not necessarily in the front. So that is how the Rastafari United Front came into existence. And then it came into existence with triple mandate, and three sets of triple mandate. The first set of triple mandate is that it's a cultural, it's a civil, and it's a faith right organization. The second set of triple mandate is that it is a national, it's a continental, and it's an international organization. That is why in 2014 we established it in all the 9 provinces of South Africa, and then in 2015, we took it to 14 African countries. And then in 2016, that is when we went to Brazil, Panama, and Jamaica to establish the RUF there. And then the third set of the triple mandate, it is focusing on Rastafari unity, development, and progress.
Rastafari United Front is a defender of the rights of the Rastafari people in South Africa. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you can you please give us a brief explanation about the African Rastafari New Faculty of Overstanding initiative and what role you are filling in that organization as well?
All right. Give thanks. This is a long overdue. I think it's a 20 years evolutionary process. First, obviously, we are not the first people to coin the concept of the new faculty of Rastafari interpretation, or the new faculty of Rastafari understanding or overstanding. The first person to come up with this was actually Elder Ras Mortimer Plano. That Rastafari needs a new faculty of interpretation. And then Mutabaruka echoed it also. And then, of course, in South Africa and Africa, probably I was one of the main proponents of the idea, to the point of rejecting certain ideas that are established, like the usage of the Bible to rationalize Rastafari as an African reality and spirituality. Like the idea that Rastafari, it can only be confined within the Christian cosmology. So a couple of things came in, but also how these ideas affected progress, unity, and development, because most of this unity going on in the movement is because of the religious doctrine and principles that we come to use to foster division among ourselves. And under development, as part of the same program, that we are not so developing or developed because we are divided over doctrines, we're divided over ideas that are not meant to go forward. So the latest, when Empress Marina Blake came forward and began to pen a series of, actually the very first article, which she made reference to me and Mutabaruka about this new faculty of overstanding. Well, it's something that with what we are doing with the platform and with the group, it is probably working on it on a maybe, I wouldn't say organized, because it's, like I said, it's something that we've been working on. I wouldn't say international. We've also been working on it on an international level. But then I'll say probably this is the first time that we are working towards hosting a summit or a conference to that end, that it can be given a proper expression and even get a buy-in or participation of the Rastafari community. So the new faculty of overstanding Rastafari is something that we've been working on, critical, advocating for the past 20 years. As also in South Africa, Rastafari in South Africa evolved also indigenous practices, evolved institutions that are indigenously here, that are incorporating the African culture. So you have, beside Nyabinghi, Bobo Shanti, and 12 tribes, which are prominently from Jamaica, you have Melchizedek order, which is uniquely South Africa in how it approaches Rastafari. You have the order of Bakehase, which is very Afrocentric. They don't use the Bible to rationalize the Haile Selassie's divinity. They use African philosophy and spirituality. You have the order of Bakalipi, who incorporated African traditional healers within Rastafari. And I observe also in many places, like I visited Rwanda, and then I find a Rastaman who uses the Quran to articulate Rastafari. Everything will tell that the Quran say. And I came across brethren who uses the Indian, the Bhagavad Gita, and some philosophies coming out of the Hare Krishna to rationalize the levity of Rastafari. And I've been to Ethiopia, where you get the indigenous Ethiopian Rasta calling themselves the Habasha Rasta, and who are more emphasizing the influence of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, who uphold Jesus Christ more than His Majesty's divinity. We still acknowledge His Majesty, but they are into Jesus. So Rastafari, with its globalization, it took different types, different shapes and form. So therefore, this needs a new overstanding that take into consideration the globalization of Rastafari, than being dealt with things like what we've been experiencing also over the years, receiving elders, delegations coming from Jamaica, is that most of them will expect Rastafari everywhere in the world to behave like Rastafari in Jamaica. Like, for instance, if you go to Tanzania, they speak 96% of them, they speak Swahili. So basically, they articulate Rastafari in Swahili. They chant the Nyabinghi chants in Swahili.
Yes.
And then you go into Malawi, they have a lot of chants in Chichewa languages. Mm-hmm. And then in Brazil, I found them incorporating some of the traditions that come out of the ayahuasca and the indigenous Latin American practices with Rastafari there in Brazil. So now, if you coming from what we are dealing with, that when you say the ancients of Rastafari, you are referring to the old people who are in Jamaica. Where do you say the prominent leaders or delegation? You're talking about people in Jamaica, and they come up with the Jamaican mindset or thinking that of Rastafari and how it should be. And mainly it is always coming up because you see the thing that come up with God, they are also people they have little space for debate. They have little space to consider something that is outside of how they do things. And Africa always suffer because you see, like being a Bobo tribe as it came from Jamaica, to a certain extent, it is an anti-African cultural expression. When you find the African Rasta who are practicing Rastafari according to these houses, they are mainly against their own indigenous traditional practices, their ancestral systems, the African traditional healers. They'll be calling them Piagat. So it's the same mindset of the colonialists. You come in, you brand the African culture as voodoo and magic, and you call it different names and so forth. So now that is why we had to eventually produce a counterculture within Rastafari, which now seek to express African African foundation of the whole thing, because we also contradict ourselves. Rastafari will say we will never give away a continent from Ireland, but when we find ourselves battling with issues of island concepts versus continental concepts or continental ideas of what the black world should be or what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's something that is it is long awaited. It was supposed it is eventually going to happen. That we either have to come together and consider a new faculty of understanding, because the old understanding, it is no more real, and it is not a reflection of the reality on the ground. Not long ago, I made a documentary about last month. It was shown on TV, but we did it a couple of months back. It was shown on TV last month. It was 2 episodes. And this documentary, it is covering all different houses of Rastafari, even those that mostly are not usually on the mainstream. And the mainstream Rasta from the mainstream structures like Bingi, Bobo, Church Tribe, they were offended when they see the African aspect of you, the Rasta who say they are traditional healers and so forth. So these are the gaps that needs to be bridged, because those we can't find ourselves in a situation where Africans are fighting to be Africans in Africa. We can't fight to be Africans in Africa as African. And we can't find ourselves that most Africans, we are in favor of foreign things, European sports, European politics, European ideas. But when it comes to African things, we try to always take them with a pinch of salt and to question them and all of these things. So yes, it's something that is supposed to happen, and that is this time right now. So we just pray that everything go according to the plan, and then in 2021 we meet in Addis Ababa and begin to work on the models that's supposed to go out.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, that's very, very interesting to get that perspective. As one that's living in the West, it is not often that I get to hear the word sound, coming from one who grew up in the culture of the continent, whatever part of the continent may be. So, thanks for sharing that, perspective with I over here. And, the more this conversation continues, is the better we will get to know one another and have more respect for, our ways, and we'll learn from each other and all of these things. So, thanks again for sharing that, General Thau-Thau. What positive change, as a result of the work of the African Rastafari New Faculty of Overstanding, what positive change would you like to see within, say, you could speak to South Africa, Azania, but Africa in general, and just Rastafari totally? Like, what would you like for the end result to be?
Well, this is such kind of mindset of a new faculty of understanding Rastafari can be attributed to even the creation of the Rastafari United. Because it had to take a particular thinking. One has to get out of the usual thinking of the mansions of the house, where we transcend mansion and we focus on the movement. Where we move from congregation to the community. We deal with Rastafari as a community, not as congregation, but these are the Bobos, the Bingis, the 12 tribes. Because we long recognize that in South Africa, in Africa, and I guess in the whole world, as I was saying, that we do not have a Nyabinghi problem. We do not have a Bobo Shanti problem. We do not have a 12 tribe problem. We have a Rastafari problem. When the police, they see us on the street, when our children are chased from school, when opportunities are withheld from us, we are denied all of these things because we are Rasta, not because we are 12 tribe Bobo or what. So the new faculty of interpretation, if it can emphasize Rastafari over the mansions, if it can emphasize the movement over the mansions, the community over the congregation, and recognize the need for unity more than ever before, because we always say it, Rasta talk about unity, Rasta sing about unity, but there's a little that is done towards unity. There's actually a lot of people who resist unity. So, it is if we can work towards unity, development, and progress. Like even the situation of the lockdown, where we are locked down in every country, and even in the same country, you can move from another province to another. It began to expose our vulnerability. That we're very vulnerable as a Rastafari community. And our strength is in our unity. If we unite, trade among ourselves, we're in that time of, they want to inject us with the microchip vaccines. And this thing, Rasta, we talk about a long time with this mark of the beast and all of that. Now, we see them happening now in our time, where you can't buy or sell. Right now, we can't enter any shop without having a mask on your face or without them putting a sanitizer in your hand. So we have reached that point that you can't sell or buy if you don't comply with regulations of Babylon. Now, we have land. We are in Africa. In South Africa alone, the Nyabinghi has got like 57 houses, which is like 57 pieces of land where they did build the tabernacles there.
Wow.
But now the mindset must change. That you can't say the mindset must change from. We can't say every time we get a piece of land, the first thing we think about is to build a house of worship, as if prayers and worship are the biggest problem we have. Now, there are other things that we can do with that piece of patches of land. We can plant food and trade among ourselves. We can plant ganja and trade among ourselves, because largely majority of Rasta, they still get their ganja, whether the one they sell or the one they consume, they still get it from the non-Rastafari. So now, although there is a lot of Rastas who are planting, but again, majority of Rastas still get from non-Rastafari. So there's a couple of things that needs to be done. And therefore, the new faculty of understanding, if it can eradicate old understanding of Rastafari and we evolve a new understanding that take unity, development, and progress into consideration, that take the collective security of Rastafari, that take the fact that all black people everywhere in the world we are oppressed. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what qualification you have, whether you have PhD, doesn't matter how authentic you think you are. And the other thing about Rastafari is that it must also bring the fundamental truth of Rastafari. Like, for instance, Rastafari self-definition. Who feels it knows it. So there's basically no one who can make anyone a Rasta or disqualify one as a Rasta. But now we still have a lot of people who are going around as if they have that authority to can decide who can be a Rasta and who can't be a Rasta, and who is a Rasta and who is not a Rasta. And therefore, these things, they deepen division, and with division, therefore, it means we can't progress, we can't go anywhere. So if this new understanding will help us transcend the old understanding, old ways of doing things, the old way of looking at the world, both the world and the world of Rastafari, then it will be the greatest achievement of us coming together. And this is what we are looking forward to, because also the people who are mobilized together to work on this new faculty of Rastafari are brilliant people within Rastafari, are knowledgeable people, are people with good standing. So therefore, we pray that with the collective wisdom that they have, this should be able to shift the paradigm within Rastafari and put us on an upward trajectory, on a growth trajectory, on a development and unity trajectory.
Yes, I. And how do you feel that this work, that the African Rastafari new faculty of Overstanding will affect the relationship of Rastafari to the rest of the Pan-African community globally?
Well, you see, one of the claims that Rastafari we have been making is that we say Rastafari is a vanguard of the Pan-African movement. Well, maybe Rastafari as Haile Selassie, but Rastafari as the Rastafari, we can't. Particularly in Africa here, the practices that are still held by the majority of Rastas, like in South Africa, the Nyabinghi is the largest group of Rastas, but it is equally one of the largest anti-African groups. You know, things that they still have issues with certain things that are fundamental to African cultural practices, like ancestors, acknowledgement and respect of the ancestors, traditional healing, African worldview, African philosophy. You know, people are more still emphasizing the King James version of the Bible. Now, you can't use the Bible as a final judge of all African cultures. And you can't use Judeo-Christianity or Abrahamic religion or Abrahamic cultural worldview as a final judge of all African cultures. Because if you do so, you are failing in the aspect of Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism is all Africa, Pan-African, all Africa. Now, all Africa should take into consideration all things African, African spirituality. You can't have Pan-Africanists who believe in white Jesus. You can't have Pan-Africanists who are, on the other hand, are defending colonial religions like Christianity and Islam. You can't have that. So the Pan-Africanist world has got a serious problem, equally so as the Rastafari world. The Rastafari world has got a serious problem in relation to the Pan-Africanist world. So we in Africa and through the RUF, we developed a policy, we call it Pan-Rastafari. That all Rastafari, we don't segregate house or mansion, but it's a Pan-Rastafari within the context of Pan-Africanism. That it is a Pan-African world view of Rastafari. It takes into consideration all Africa. So now this conception of Rastafari, it is only compatible to Pan-Africanism as much as Pan-Africanism is true to itself. But being honest with ourselves is that the large part of the movement is Judeo-Christianity, and Judeo-Christianity is not African. Much as they try to paint Jesus black and try to make biblical people black, Judeo-Christianity is not African. We have our indigenous African cultures, practices. We have our concepts of God. They might not be that famous and what, but they're African and they're indigenous. So now, we can't use the slave master's religion to push our liberation discourse. And this is the dilemma that Rastafari have, is that Rastafari still carries with it a lot of colonial baggage. And it tried to African or to Rastafarize colonialism. Try to put dreadlocks on Jesus Christ. But Jesus Christ is a colonialism. So when you try to Rastafarize colonialism, like our Africans also try to Africanize colonialism, people start to tell you certain things that they are not African. You start to tell that these things are African. This is a problem. So that is why it is important that a new faculty of Rastafari interpretation and understanding should be dealt with within the movement, get it ventilated. We reach a particular, battle it out, because the battle of ideas, we're going to have a serious battle of ideas for the soul of the movement. So now, it is not an event, it's a process. It's not going to be just a one-day thing and then from there everything changes. No, it is the beginning of the change that we want it to be, which is basically to squarely center Rastafari as an African movement. Because we can't have Rastafari as a Judeo-Christian movement or Abrahamic movement. Rastafari is African. The Rastafari are Africans who were taken from Africa and taken into slavery, and they were taken from indigenous communities that were using indigenous practices of the Bakongo, of the Banyarwanda, of the Baganda, of the Nyabinghi people. And these people are not the people who are trying to portray them through Judeo-Christian spectacles and some of them through the Bible. They can only understand them through understanding the way of the Bantu people, the way of the African people. So it is a process for a much-needed change. I always give the example of the Berlin Conference, that the white men assembled in Berlin for 3 months and 15 days to come up with everything that is now our problem. The borders of Africa, the divide and rule, the Francophone countries and the Anglophone and the Lusophone, all of these problems that we have. They sat down for 3 months, 15 days to do that. And I said, I don't know any Pan-African conference. I don't know any Rastafari conference that ever lasted for 2 weeks to deliberate about decolonization of ourselves and about our redemption or what. We will have some 3 days conference. More time on the third day, people are already tired. They are even starting to go and do shopping. The people do have less concentration span. Some will be in the conference but not being in the conference. So basically, the past 150 years of African intellectualism, from the intellectuals of the 18-something like Blyden, Edward Blyden, Mangena Mukoni, Nehemiah Tile, Tio Soga, and coming through for the past 150 years, our intellectuals have not produced anything strong enough to decolonize. Like, for instance, most of our intellectuals, they have conversation with themselves. They go and have conferences with an audience that is not meant for what they are saying, because majority of them in the audience is the same professors and academics and their friends. All right, yes. Yeah, so I was just saying, I mean, even on Africa Day, there's a video, I don't know if I did post it in our group. I didn't. I'm going to put it now, where I was actually having a debate with the police because we broke the lockdown laws. We marched with the Pan-African Congress of Azania, which is a Pan-Africanist movement that every now and then you got Rastas collaborating and working with them. During the apartheid, I was trained under their Liberation Army. So, but they haven't been too effective in even attaining state power. So that's why the ANC is the ruling power. Now, with the Pan-Africanist movement also, when they started to acknowledge Africa Day, they never make mention of His Majesty's name. Now, we also told them that, you see, this is the challenges we are having. You are celebrating 25th May as African Liberation Day. You say it was in Addis Ababa. You say out of that conference came out the OAU, but you don't mention the first chairman of the OAU. You don't mention the host. You don't mention the king of the country, or the emperor of the country, or the empire that invited you. And that itself is a problem with Pan-Africanism, that as long as Pan-Africanists don't acknowledge His Majesty, it's going to be a problem. But at the same time, I said maybe that is also what makes sense why every now and then there is Rastafari among the Pan-Africanists, so that we can remind them of His Majesty and His work. Because in my view, His Majesty was one of the most practical Pan-Africanists. Practical in a sense that he practically put an institution called the Organization of African Unity. He put it in his country, in Addis Ababa, and he funded it for the first year. He made sure that every aspect of it in the administration works properly. So he was not just a host and have other countries that were part of it to fund its establishment. No, he established it first and then invited everybody to come and participate. He built the Africa Wall and then invited everybody to come into that Africa Wall. And then when they were there, then they come and establish the Organization of African Unity. And then they name Addis Ababa as the right place. Not because it was the only place that was not colonized, but because also it was the only place that was infrastructurally ready, even in terms of the infrastructure. So the role of the king is underplayed, which make this uneasy relationship with Pan-Africanists, or which create this relationship we have with Pan-Africanists, that we have to be among them to remind them of His Majesty and His works, to remind them of Marcus Garvey, to remind them of their works within the Pan-African struggle. So there is still a lot that between Rastafari and Pan-Africanists that we need to get together. But His Majesty said, we Africans have chosen the path of Pan-Africanism to guarantee our independence and to wage our struggle. So it is inevitable that Rastafari is Pan-Africanist. And that itself should be made very clear that we are not Democrats, we are not socialists, we are not communists, we are Pan-Africanists. And stepping straight from His Majesty and his declaration, his work, he declared Pan-Africanism. he practically manifested it and it works. It's not just claims that we are making. I mean, the OAU, the idea of the establishment of the OAU was a Pan-Africanist idea. The fact that the successor of the OAU, the AU, the African Union, it is not Pan-Africanist. Basically, we don't have any Pan-Africanist institution, and we don't have a Pan-Africanist government. We don't have any Pan-Africanist government. We don't have any Pan-Africanist ruling parties. We don't have any Pan-Africanist opposition parties in parliament. Like Africa's number one opposition party in parliament, like in South Africa, our number one opposition party is not Pan-African, it's the Democratic Alliance, which is like a white party that is still nostalgic about apartheid. And then the third party, which is a Pan-Africanist party, which is Julius Malema's party, it is a number two opposition. It's not number one. And that is in the context of South Africa, but you can look at it throughout Africa. The opposition party, the ruling party. So you can't even say the African Union is Pan-Africanist when 53% of its funding comes from the European Union, and the European Union is responsible or is a heir or successor of the Berlin Conference and its division of Africa. So basically, the people who divided Africa can't be seen as the same people who will fund Africa's unity.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be against their interest.
Yes.
Rastafari globally should be reminders to the world of who Haile Selassie is and what he stood for, and Marcus Garvey, and you know, have that influence on the Pan-African community to realign it with its origin, really, because Haile Selassie, as you said, is the foundation of Pan-Africanism in practicality and, you know, actually functioning. I mean, the UNIA was before that, but it was not, you know, as far as being on the continent and having countries involved, it wasn't really that. So His Majesty made it, you know, more concrete.
Yeah, basically what I can say also in addition is that the Rastafari, they should do that like within the context of Pan-Africanism. They should use Pan-Africanism to highlight the Pan-African aspect of Haile Selassie and Marcus Garvey. Right. We must not use what we are using currently. Rastafari, we are using our religious conviction on Haile Selassie.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, we're sounding like we are imposing another new religion or another new gods to the Africans. Africa does not need any new religion. Africa is desperately need liberation movements, not religious movements or anything. So where we have failed as a movement is to impress upon our people the works of Haile Selassie and Marcus Garvey. We've been focusing on trying to impress upon the people the divinity of Haile Selassie and Marcus Garvey. But then it should be the works, because it's out of the works that we can say that this man is divine. It's only divine men who can do this type of work.
Yes,
not you come in and you impose divinity, and we are dealing with people here who have different ideas of what is divine. You know, either from an African concept of what is divine to an inherited colonial concept of what is divine. Because we don't come like a clean slate, or these people you are meeting, they don't come like clean slate that they never had the knowledge of God. Once you say Haile Selassie is God, they go back to their own idea and understanding of what God is.
Right.
And then from there, it creates cognitive dissonance. It creates dual consciousness. It creates a double thinking. You know, they start to find themselves more time rejecting the Haile Selassie you bring to them. But if we bring Haile Selassie and his works And you show that is the only man who did that, who can do that, or make them reflect themselves on the works of Marcus Garvey. That is the only black man who built an organization in such highest level of UNIA and the shops and the things that he got to establish. And then you bring in Haile Selassie. I was reasoning with Mama Desta earlier today, which she's one person who doesn't like to engage in theological debate or reasoning, the Rasta theological debate. So she's saying, for her, when some people sometimes they'll be having issues when you say Haile Selassie is the creator. He said, no, for her, when she said Haile Selassie created, because he created the OAU. So she's talking about things within our own realm and level, not things outside of our realm, in the realm of the stars, the moon, and the sun, and so he created the planets and what. No, within our own level, the Organization of African Unity, refer to things that people can relate with, So in that way, then let them be able to say, but then this man is not an ordinary man. Miriam Makeba?
Yes,
Miriam Makeba performed at the inauguration of the OAU on the 25th of May 1963. She performed in the history of that after the deliberations of the conference and everything, and then she was one of the performers. Miriam Makeba, she said to His Majesty, where can I get the dressing room to change? His Majesty said to her, you can choose any room in the palace. So she got lost in the throne room, one of the throne rooms, because the palace has got about 7 throne rooms. She got lost in one of the throne rooms, and then His Majesty, and then she said when she was busy changing her outfit and putting her clothes on the throne, putting her clothes on the throne, she said she saw a very great light coming through, and then she knew that His Majesty is not an ordinary man. So, you see, she did not have anybody to preach for her and cut the coat for her sisters and what. She had to go through her experience.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, she has to. So So I'm saying there are a lot of people. I've met old people, like an old man I met him in Tanzania, who said he was a student when Haile Selassie came to Tanzania, and Julius Nyerere got them to make a guard of honor from the airport to the State House for His Majesty. And then so he got a glimpse of His Majesty. And his articulation is that His Majesty is divine. Because he's not a Rasta man, he's not speaking from Rasta theology, he's speaking from what he saw once in 1963 in Tanzania. It's something that he just saw once as a student on the side of the road. So Miriam Makeba speak of what she saw once when she was in the palace of His Majesty. So I'm saying that we can always bring His Majesty to the nation, and the nation still be able to see and acknowledge His divinity, than to be pushing His divinity like a religion, as more time we are doing, and it creates confusion and a repulsion where the people they seems to repulse the whole idea.
Yes, it's a situation where, like the saying goes, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But whenever, like how you explained it, when Rastafari, when we approach people with preaching as though His Majesty is, when you say the word God, and they automatically associate it with, whatever it is that they thought of God before, it ends the conversation right then and there, and it could be much more effective conversation and communication about His Majesty and His works if we would only
have less of a religious approach when we're, expressing ourselves to the rest of the African community and the world at large, really, because everybody can learn from His Majesty, So, yes, I give thanks for that explanation. That was really enlightening, because I never heard the story of Miriam Makeba and her experience with Haile Selassie, so that was really good to hear, and I'm sure the audience will also enjoy that story. Yes, so
there's quite a lot of stories of His Majesty with many other people. It's just that the narrative of His Majesty from the Rastafari perspective, it is limited by those who maybe from the stories of the elders from Jamaica, the ancients, and then the musicians and some few prominent individuals. So they've narrowed the narrative, and sometimes people have a false concept. It's like His Majesty is only divine in relation to Jamaica.
Right.
But you don't understand that it's divine in relation to the world. His Majesty made a declaration, I think it appeared in the Chicago Tribune of 1956, one of the American newspaper, I think, where His Majesty said, I'm not only the king of the Ethiopians, but I'm king of all the Negroes all over the world.
Yes,
So there are most places you go to Uganda, you sit down with the Uganda Rastafari, they tell you their experiment where the king of the Uganda had to remove from his throne so that His Majesty should sit on his throne, and which it never happened anywhere before. A king does not stand up on his throne for another king to sit on.
Right.
As a guest. So you go to there's a place called the Emperor's View in Malawi, where His Majesty stood up, where he's stand up there and meditated and look. Is on the top of Zomba Mountain. So that place they named it the Emperor's View because he went there, he meditated there, and for a while. Some they said the whole night. And then you go to, and in Malawi too, probably the only place that His Majesty gave the most, probably the only place he gave the most elaborate speech about the youth of Africa, the longest speech, where he's telling the African youth what they must do, what the future holds for them, what is their role and responsibilities. So there is quite a lot that hasn't been heard about His Majesty, and which experiences of the people who experience that, and all of them declare His divinity. I was once a student in Ethiopia. I got a scholarship from the Orthodox Church, and then I will have conversation with deacons. I will have conversation with old people. One old man once said to me, do you know that Haile Selassie is not the name of a man? And it's not the name of an angel. I asked him, what is it? He said, it is the name of a God. And just said that, and that's it. No deep, no philosophy, no lot of theology. It's like with African conception of God, Africans, like even members of my own tribe, they will not have a 30 minutes conversation about God. They can't write for you about 10 paragraphs of God, In simple lines, like, this is what makes God God, Now, this thing that we the Rastafari have gotten into, you find like we are quoting 1,000 scriptures and all of these things. It is un-African. And Africans, we don't have overemphasis of what God is, because here we're dealing with something mysterious and divine. So, and that can be defined in many ways. So there is no fixed definition. So as much as you can go around and hear so many things about His Majesty, which is not fixed or standardized. You will hear, I had an old woman, she said to me, do you know that Haile Selassie did not die? This woman, she said she was one of the bridesmaids of Empress Menen who came from Wolo province with Empress Menen to Addis Ababa. It's a very old woman. And that was around there 2000 when I was in Ethiopia. And now this woman said, do you know that Haile Selassie did not die? So what happened? He said Haile Selassie went straight into the moon. And now this is a one knowledge that is always common among the Rasta, particularly when it's a full moon. They say that thing you see inside of the full moon is Haile Selassie. Mm-hmm. So I was so surprised to hear a non-Rastafari reiterating something that Rastas are saying themselves. And just saying that, that he's divine. And never said a third word or a fourth word after that. Just Haile Selassie is divine. Not try to now emphasize, explain, rationalize. It's like somebody saying, that man is God. Now, we fallen into a trap that we need to explain God. God has always been black. It's only in Rastafari or during the era of Rastafari, because Rastafari is the latest black emphasis of God, or the latest evolution of a system that is talking about a black God. But in Africa, we have 3,000 tribes that speak 2,000 languages. It means we have 2,000 names of God, 2,000 ideas of God, 2,000 cosmologies, which are all indigenously African. Now, all the 2,000 names of God are referring to a black God. Anyone of them, if he's saying Kulunkulu, we say Mlungu, or whatever the name of God they are using, when they close their eyes, they imagine a black God. It is only with the advent of Rastafari that the Africans had to emphasize the blackness of the God. But all the time, God has always been black. God does not begin to be black in 1930. God has always been black for black people, like the images of Osiris in Egypt, the black man. The images of Wakagurake among the Oromo people in Ethiopia, they talk about the black god called Wakagurake. You go to the Great Lakes regions among the Baganda people, their concepts and images of God is black. So Rastafari does not come with a new thing to say God is black. It's an African thing. The only thing is that Rastafari is a response to colonialism and slavery. While all these other African systems, they are pre-colonialism and pre-slavery. But Rastafari, it comes to respond to colonialism and slavery in a world where the white God is being imposed. So therefore it has to come up now and articulate the black God and emphasize the black God as the freedom God. That is where the difference is, but it's not coming up with anything new.
Well, give thanks, Ras. That was very good reasoning there. And I don't have any more questions, but I just want to open up the platform. If you have any works that you would like to notify the global community about, or any meditation that you would like to share, while you have the time and space, the floor is yours.
Well, given the limitation of time also, because I've been between things, but I would say give thanks even for this platform to really the one in that part of the earth, and also to just emphasize that the struggle of the Rastafari in every country, it is linked with the larger struggle, which is the international Rastafari struggle. Our struggle is the same. Our sitting, sometimes we will sit and we listen to people, the Africans from the African diaspora, talking about slavery and suffering. And I'm thinking, Africans, we suffer. We had carol gardens everywhere. We had carol gardens, our own carol gardens during apartheid. We have the Gugule 27. There were 7 Rasta activists who were killed in 1985 during the apartheid time. We're still going through everything. So basically, our struggle is the same everywhere. There is no super Rastas. People who feel like they have suffered more than others. Black people will suffer the same way everywhere, in Africa and outside of Africa. So if we can understand that our struggle is one, and therefore our resistance to that struggle must be one, Like I was saying, that we don't have Nyabinghi problem, we don't have Bobo problem, we don't have 12 tribe problem, we have a Rastafari problem. So we need to come up with Rastafari solution to Rastafari problem. We don't need a Bobo Shanti solution or a Bingi solution or 12 tribe solution. We need a Rastafari solution. A solution that is holistic and that takes into consideration that all classes of black people are servants of the Europeans. Doesn't care whether you have PhD, doesn't care you shout God to the loudest, doesn't care you are a Christian or you are Muslim, as long as you are black, you are oppressed. And we are oppressed by white supremacy racism, which is a global world phenomenon.
All right. Give thanks, Rastafari. If you would please bless us with a word in your, what's your ethnic group?
Well, I speak, my ethnic group is Northern Sotho, it's called Sepedi. And I speak all South African languages, of course. And I also speak some African languages like Kiswahili. And of course, I speak Amharic because I studied a bit in Ethiopia. So yeah, but my mother tongue, the one I took from my mother's breast, is Sepedi.
Okay, if you could give us how you would greet or say goodbye or bless one on their way as they depart in your native.
In our native language, we say Salang Rabo Tse. That means stay well. Salang Rabo Tse. Which means stay well. But when we greet, we say Thobela. Now, Thobela is one of our old kings who they trace their lines back to the Sudan, and then was variously called Tovera, and then it will go in different varieties with names like Tafari and so forth. So we say Thobela, like how the Rastafari, we say Rastafari. We greet in the name of our king Rastafari. So in my people's language, they greet in the name of our first king called King Thobela. So they say Thobela, which basically means greetings. So, and then when we say finish, like now is Salang Kabotzi, which means stay well.
Salang Kabove.
Salang Kabotzi. We must arrange. I was talking to another brother that we must arrange. We start to come to places like North Carolina there and establish the indigenous African language schools.
Yes, sir.
Because Africa is big, we can't have everybody try to study Amharic or Kiswahili. We can have schools where we teach Zulu. People come and learn some Zulu language. And it is important because the language is the carrier of the people's concepts, ideas, and principles. Yes. For you to understand African concepts, ideas, and principles, it's always best when you understand the African languages. And African languages are onomatopoeic, so there is no direct translation from African languages to European languages. What we basically do now, and what I was doing with you, tell you that Salang Kabotzi means stay well, we do use what in linguistics they call it comparative linguistic dynamics. We compare what we have in our language with what they have in the language we try to translate to. But African languages can't be translated. They are onomatopoeic. Our words are built out of the sound they make. We say a frog is hua hua because the frog go like hua hua hua. So it names itself. We say a human being is muntu because he's a muntu because you go to when you walk. But also when you talk, is a two. So it means a walking and a talking being. A being that name itself by the sound that it make, two. That is why it's Muntu. And then in plural is Bantu, Ba-tu. And their language is Isintu. So everything that we say, it name itself. Like in the European language, they say baboon. but we are going to say Tsweni. And Tsweni, it derived from Tswana, which means that which resembles. So they say it is Tsweni because it's that which resembles a human being. But I don't think baboon directly translates that which resembles a human being. And I said, baboon might be something else. So now most of our words, our names, we name them according to the sound that they make. It's onomatopoeic.
Give thanks, Russ. Give thanks. That's very, very enlightening and very helpful, and I would love to continue to, learn and even share that type of information, because we here in the West, we have a lot to learn about ourselves that we forgot in the Ma'afa, and so any opportunity and platform we can use to enlighten and help educate and sharpen each other is great. So, give thanks again, General Thau-Thau, for sharing everything that you shared. Give thanks for all the reasoning. And, we would like to say that we would, we hope and pray that all the works that you are involved in continues to flourish and grow and strengthen and help the community. And until we can reason again, blessed love. And if there's anything else that I would like to say as we close.
No, give thanks, my Lord, even for affording us the opportunity to speak to members of our family, both near and far. And we will continue this. This is the beginning. We say in Africa, we have a story that is told for the whole year, and that story is told every day. So there's never been an end of something to say. There's always been never enough time to narrate the stories. So, but our stories, they never end. We have a lot to say. We are the talking book. We are the library on legs.
Yes, I will give thanks again. Rastafari.
Rastafari, give thanks.
That's it.
Chant down